It is coming up to 7 minutes past 1. Hello, welcome to the BBC Asia Network phone-in show with me, Nihal. And the question I have for you to start the week is this. Should Babar Ahmad be extradited to the US? MPs will be debating the case of Babar Ahmad today in the Commons. He's the man from South London arrested on internet-related terrorism charges back in 2004 at the request of the United States government. Since then, he's been in prison while he fights extradition. The current treaty between the USA and the UK says he should be sent to the States to face trial, but campaigners believe he should be tried here, where the offences were allegedly committed. What do you think about this? The Americans want him because they say the US was, of course, the target of his alleged crimes, and that he used an internet server based there. He's currently in the high-security Belmarsh prison in South London, while the European Court of Human Rights decides whether the proposed extradition is legal or not. Earlier this year, an e-petition raised over 100,000 signatures calling for him to be released. There's no doubt the charges he's been accused of are very serious. The US, of course, are our allies, are they not, in the global fight against terrorism? So, is that a justification for sending him there? Or do you believe what's wrong with our legal system? After all, this man has been languishing in Belmarsh for 7 years. I'm sure in 7 years he could have been tried and convicted or released here in the UK. Do you think it's time we stood up to the US and tried him here, even if he's charged with offences against the United States of America? Or do you believe, as his target was America and American interests, they have a right to try him in their country? After all, what he was alleged to have plotted was against American interests and American servicemen. 81869 on the text, email Nihal at bbc.co.uk, or give me a call and tell me what you think on 08459 440 445. But let's start the discussion by speaking to Professor Anthony Glees, who's from the Centre for Security and Intelligence Studies at the University of Buckingham. Good afternoon, Professor Glees.
Good afternoon.
Why is it that our legal system isn't good enough to try this man and prosecute him? After all, he was living here while he committed his alleged crimes.
Well, he was living here, and of course, a British citizen born in this country.
Yes.
But the alleged offences for which he's being charged were offences against the United States. They weren't against any UK person or institutions. And the offences for which the Americans would like to try him are extremely serious offences. Anybody that believes in the idea of international lawfulness has to accept that extradition is a key part of that, particularly to states which are committed to lawfulness, which are democratic. I mean, America is the most democratic country in the world, and lawfulness is enshrined, as you know, in a written constitution there.
Well, they do also bend that when they want to, don't they? Guantanamo Bay being a prime example of that.
Well,
I mean hugely controversial in terms of how legal it was.
It's interesting that you should mention Guantanamo Bay. That's a very complicated area.
It is.
All I would note is that the people at Guantanamo Bay are people the United States believes were engaged in terrorism but not wearing uniform, not members of military forces. And that puts them in a special category, a especially difficult category when coming to justice. And
enemy
President
combatants.
Obama, as you know, said he would close Guantanamo Bay. When he was confronted with the legal complexity of doing so, what has he done? He's kept it open. So that's a different area. But where people, like this chappie who, hacked into American computers...
Gary McKinnon, I think.
The Americans are entitled to ask him to be extradited, and look at it the other way round.
Okay, yes, but you make a good example there of where someone has committed a crime in the United States, allegedly.
Alleged crime.
Alleged crime. But in the case of Babar Ahmad, no actual crime was committed. He is accused of plotting to do these things. Therefore, surely we have a legal system which is robust enough and fair enough, and we're not such a bad democracy ourselves, are we, Professor Glees, where we could presumably be mature enough to try him ourselves.
But you can't try somebody for offences that they have or are alleged to have committed against a third party that has its own legal system. As I say, turn the situation round and you'll see what I mean. Supposing you've got somebody in America who has tried to arrange for the blowing up of British warships or the killing of British troops, we would demand that person be extradited to the United Kingdom to face those charges. Or somebody who's murdered somebody in the United Kingdom but has fled to the United States of America. As a general rule, you would expect such a person to be tried in the country where the alleged offences were committed. And in a way, Nihal, you gave the game away for those who think he shouldn't be sent back when you said, you asked the question, is it time we stood up to the United States and tried him here? This isn't about standing up to...
but it is, Professor Glees, isn't it? Because this is one-sided. This extradition treaty in America, if an American citizen, we want to bring him back here, and I'll bring you back to your point and flip it. If an American citizen was to be extradited here, a judge would have to be involved and then have to look at the merits of it. It seems, and various QCs and journalists and the 140,000 people that signed that petition seem to think that it's a lot easier to send one of our citizens to America than it is to get an American over here.
Well, what you...
And that is the truth, isn't it?
What I'm afraid you forget, Nihal, is that in November 2006, Babar Ahmad lost his appeal, and on the 4th of June 2007, the House of Lords refused him leave to appeal against that loss of appeal. So it's not the case that British judges haven't looked at this. They've looked at it twice. It's now being looked at by the European Court of Human Rights, as you know, and we're awaiting their judgment. But it's not the case that the British judiciary has not looked at this. They have looked at it and found it wanting.
But would you agree there is an imbalance in the relationship between the UK and the US when it comes to extraditing our citizens?
Well, we have a law. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a professor of security studies.
Yes.
We have a law. That law, the 2003 extradition treaty with the United States of America, has been looked at by the judiciary, by senior judiciary, and then by very senior judiciary, and they have all said that it is consistent with the law that he be extradited, as anybody else who has committed or who is alleged to have committed offences against the United States and its citizens would be extradited. Now, we can have an argument as to whether that law is justified or not, but the fact is there is that law, and laws have to be upheld. What's more, petitions, 100,000, 500,000, a million, I don't care. Petitions are not the way to resolve legal issues. We'd have the death penalty in this country if we agreed that petitions should decide the outcome of legal cases.
Okay, Professor Glees, thank you. Stay with us. Let's speak to Fahad Ansari, who is from the Free Babar Ahmad campaign. Good afternoon, Fahad.
Good afternoon, Nihal.
Now, you've listened to what Professor Glees has to say. Now, why should Babar Ahmad face trial here for alleged crimes against US targets and the United States?
Well, I mean, there's a few points I'd like to come back on about Professor Glees said. But first, because he's a national security expert. I'm a lawyer. I've been working with the extradition laws for the last 8 years. So I do have more of a speciality in this area and can answer many of his concerns.
Good.
One of the first things he mentions is that judges have had a chance to consider Babar's case. But the reality is this treaty, and this is where the lopsidedness, as Nick Clegg said, of it comes into play. To extradite a British citizen, or indeed anybody from Britain to America under this treaty, there's no need to present what's called a prima facie case, meaning you have to show that there's a likelihood that you can prosecute this man successfully. There's no need to show that in this case. So, for example, some of the evidence that the Americans produced in the magistrate's court were included a brochure for the Empire State Building dating back to 1973 when Babar's father visited New York. This was used as evidence that Babar was plotting to blow up the Empire State Building. As Babar's dad said, I'm sure modern-day terrorists' intelligence is a bit more up to speed than an old brochure such as that. So,
but their entire case didn't hinge on that, though, did it? I mean, presumably it was more technical and complex than that, wasn't it? I understand the point you're trying to make, but it would be wrong of us to assume that their case hinged on a 70s brochure of the Empire State Building.
Well, absolutely. There was other evidence available. Now, the point was the judges who looked at the case never had the opportunity to consider whether that evidence was strong enough to make a prima facie case. Indeed, one of the judges, District Judge Workman, he said in January 2005 that this is a difficult and troubling case, that the defendant, Babar, is a British citizen who is alleged to have committed crimes which, if the evidence were available, could have been prosecuted in this country. Judge Workman gave evidence to the Parliamentary Home Affairs Select Committee on 2 further occasions where he expressed grave concerns about how easy it was for a British citizen to be extradited to the UK for alleged offences committed in the UK. Now, Professor Glees also, he keeps referring to sending him back. The fact is, Babar's never been to the United States, so this isn't the case where he committed an offence in the US, fled to the UK, and is being sent back. He's never been there. He's born and raised his entire life. He's lived in the UK. Another troubling aspect I found with Professor Glees' analysis of the situation, which seems to be lacking in any form of legal credibility.
Well, as he admitted, he's not a lawyer.
Well, I would ask him to refrain from commenting on legal issues which affect the life and liberty of everybody in this country. This treaty, while 3 legal experts did view it to be fair, you had over 100 lawyers, including senior QCs, commenting that it was unfair and that a person such as any British citizen accused of committing a crime in this country should be prosecuted here. I'll give you one last point on that, is that last January there was a case in the Court of Appeal called Regina versus Shepherd and Whittle. Now, this is very important because this is an identical case involving white supremacists. They were running a website which was hosted on a server in the US, like Babar's alleged website. Now, what the Court of Appeal said, that the correct forum to try these people was the UK, because the entirety of the offence, including the uploading of materials, everything else was done in the UK, despite the fact that the alleged targets were in the US. So there's a clear discrepancy in how this case is being handled.